Okay, something is wrong with the batteries in iPhone 14 Pros. Not all of them, seemingly, but a lot of them, mine, maybe yours, a lot of people have noticed something very weird on their iPhone 14 Pros this year. And I make this video feeling pretty credentialed. I have owned every single iPhone each year for the past decade. And this time, something changed. Something is different, and I had to get to the bottom of it. Let's start by how we got here. A few days ago, it's just after 10 p.m. and my iPhone 14 Pro dies. Now, this wasn't an abnormal Monday. This had been happening most days for months. I don't know why I decided to check the battery health for the first time ever this night, but I did. I go over to settings, battery, and battery health. And I see something on this iPhone 14 Pro that I have never seen on an iPhone this early in my life. But first, just a quick word from today's sponsor. I want to show you my brand new desk setup for my podcast made possible by FlexiSpot, who sponsored today's video. They just sent me one of their brand new standing desks, and this thing is incredible. Up until this point, I haven't had a proper standing desk for my podcast setup, but now I can just press a button and the desk raises automatically. It is flawless, it is smooth, and it is super sturdy. Just take a look at the glass of water on the desk as I'm typing away on my keyboard. I'm a pretty tall dude, so at standing height like this, you would expect a ton of wobble, but there essentially isn't any. And the phenomenal build quality carries over to the weight limit as well. You can put up to 440 pounds on this FlexiSpot desk, which means if you ever just want to go for a little ride, you can put yourself up there. You can maybe lay down, take a little nap if you ever get tired while moving up or down. Now, this desk behind me is the brand new E7 Pro, which I've been absolutely loving, but there's a ton of different options on FlexiSpot's website. They have ergonomic chairs as well and a ton of other desk options. Like if you want a T-frame, you can check out the E7 Basic. Or for a limited budget, you can choose the E2 model for only $150 and you get the basic standing function. Make sure to check out my link in the pinned comment below as well as in the description and use my code YTB15 for 10% off your order of $500 or more. Huge thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to it. I was sitting at just 90% battery health, which means that over the course of less than 11 months, I had lost 10% of my battery capacity. Let me be clear here. Batteries degrading over time is normal and expected. I'm not mad that my iPhone's battery degraded, but 10%, that wasn't normal. So I see this, I'm mad, and I go over to Twitter/X and I just share it. This is unacceptable. How is my phone already degraded this much? As it turns out, it wasn't just my iPhone 14 Pro that seemingly degraded faster than it had in the past. It was a ton of other people's. I'm talking thousands upon thousands. It was a bunch of other Apple YouTubers. It was a plethora of journalists. And most importantly, it was a lot of you. It was a lot of normal people. People that watch my videos, people that I love and appreciate and that don't buy the new iPhone every year. People that buy an iPhone to hold on for 2, 3, 4+ years, as you should be able to do, especially when you're dropping a rack on a phone. Speaking of some of those journalists, they noticed that this thread was growing, that a lot of people were having battery issues, so they started to write about it. And it started off small, but it spread very quickly, very fast. And this was basically the front page of every single tech blog in the world. As I'm reading through these articles, the sentiment I'm walking away with time and time again is that this doesn't seem normal. So what is normal? According to Apple, iPhone batteries are rated to retain up to 80% of their original capacity for 500 cycles. And that is the first time in this video that we have said the word cycles. Notice how that hasn't been brought up before because in Apple's iPhone battery health, they only show you a percentage. They don't show you the other, arguably more important part about your battery's health, and this needs to change. Let's start off with what a cycle is. One battery cycle, again according to Apple, is when a phone completely loses 100% of its charge. That could be using 50% one day, charging back up and losing 50% the second day. That could be 75-25 as Apple shows in their graphic. It's just whatever number of percents discharge 100, that is one cycle. Cool, so how do you actually check how many battery cycles your iPhone has? Well, you gotta get this Mac app called Coconut Battery. You just plug your phone in, it gives you a bunch of useful battery stats, and I learned that I have over 345 cycles on my iPhone 14 Pro, which is a lot. This is in less than 11 months of owning the phone, which means that if we actually do the math on then how long it will be until a battery replacement, it for me is under a year and a half of owning this phone before, according to Apple's own standards, this is no longer a normal battery. My point here, I'm being a bit facetious, is that you're gonna have to replace your battery every year and a half on this iPhone 14 Pro. And how much does that cost? If you're an AppleCare subscriber, it's free. And I find it very fascinating that one of the core tenets Apple advertises for AppleCare Plus is unlimited battery replacements for 2 years. Again, if your battery's holding less than 80% capacity for 500 cycles, they actually won't replace it until then. So it's not like you can get a battery whenever you want. You can get a new battery whenever your last one gets bad enough. And Apple says that 80% is bad enough. So how much does it cost when a normal person like me without AppleCare wants to buy it? It is $99. Coincidentally, this is the most expensive it has ever been to replace a battery in an iPhone. For the iPhone 13s just last year, for example, it only cost $89. And I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist and suggest that Apple raised the price intentionally on the 14s because they knew long ahead of time in development that these phones were going to have some battery problems. I'm being facetious. I'm not actually suggesting that. I am suggesting I don't think that price hike is valid or warrant when you're just going to get another battery, that there seems to be something up with this system for. This gets into the fun part where we get to talk about what is actually up. Why is this happening? Like, what is the fundamental root for this? There's a number of theories that I've seen, and a lot of them are just completely ridiculous. Number one, we're all just using our phones too much. We got the iPhone 14 Pro, and we just went buck wild, and we've used our phones in a way we've never used them before a lot. That's, pretty silly for obvious reasons. People don't like dramatically change their phone habits just because they got Dynamic Island. Although I do love Dynamic Island, and I still really enjoy it to this day. That's definitely not the actual cause here. Number two, it was the always on display. Now, this could potentially be a factor, but I don't think it's the factor. Myself, for example, I'm at 90%. I only use the always on display for maybe a week of owning this phone, and it has been off since the second week I've had it. So a lot of other people have been saying the same thing. I don't think that that is the reason. Again, it could be a contributor though. Three, it's MagSafe or wireless charging. This generates more heat than just plugging your phone in with a lightning cable, and this is the root. I almost believed this one until I realized that I've been MagSafe exclusive charging my phones, like including my 12 and my 13 for 2 years now. And again, my 13 didn't have this problem, neither did my 12 with battery health. Well, this would be a really convenient and easy explanation. It just isn't consistent with what I've experienced personally. And finally, maybe it's just the air. Maybe just in general, things have been too hot, or there's something up with heat management on these phones. This one sounds the wildest out of all of these, but in my opinion, it is actually the most realistic case scenario to explain why the 14 Pro is off. If you went outside at all this year, you might have noticed that it was a bit hotter than it normally is. In fact, I believe this was the hottest year on record in recorded human history. Second thing you should pay attention to is that Apple introduced what they called a new thermal system on iPhone 14 models, but they didn't go into detail about what that was. They mentioned it to media and some members of the press, maybe like for a moment in the keynote, but nothing else. And that's weird. It seems like it was a significant upgrade. Apple would spend a lot of time talking about the new tech that they put in to make these phones run cooler. I'm just sus that we don't know that much about it, that it changed specifically for the 14 series, and now the batteries aren't doing the best. Wait a second, I haven't explained what heat would possibly have to do with batteries. Batteries don't do well in heat. Apple says that batteries are most comfortable between 32 degrees Fahrenheit and 95, and they specifically note that prolonged exposure to severe temperatures can hurt your iPhone and its battery permanently forever. The best visual example is that if you leave your iPhone burning in the hot sun, it's going to potentially damage the battery. I don't know why batteries work this way. I don't want to dive into the tech. Just know that they do not do well in the heat, and they don't do great in the cold, but especially the heat. Now, it would be really easy to end the video there and say, those are just my thoughts. That's probably what happened. It was hot outside, and iPhone batteries don't like heat, and this new thermal system is sus, and that's what caused the degradation. But what if I actually had just a fragment of data to suggest this? I took a random sample of 7 iPhones I had laying around at home. In this fantastic coconut battery app that I showed you just a few moments ago, it also has another feature. It shows you the average operating temperature for your battery since it has been in use. And guess which phone out of all 7 that I tested had the highest average operating temperature? Shocker, it was the iPhone 14 Pro at an average of 27 degrees Celsius, which is just about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, other iPhones got close, like 78, 76 degrees Fahrenheit, but this one was the hottest. On average, it hit peaks higher. I'm just saying, It's weird, okay? I cannot confirm 100% that I'm right about this heat management and the thermals, but this is the best I can do. But at the end of the day, this is still just my best guess. And the point I'm really trying to drive home in this video is that while everyone seemingly has a different idea or a different reason for why their iPhone's 14 battery degraded so much faster this year than in the past, this bad experience has been pretty consistent. And if there is one thing that we know for sure, it's that there's never been an iPhone battery situation like this, and that at the end of the day, something is up with these phones. So now that we've set the table, what do I actually want to see come out of this situation? Number one, I want to hear something from Apple. A lot of these publications that picked up my story and my experience have reached out to Apple for comment. They haven't said anything. As the source of this, I would like Apple to respond in some meaningful way. At minimum, I want them to include the cycle count and battery health in a future iOS update. I know that's super easy. The iPhone keeps track of it. Obviously, you could just put it there for people to view. It's very important to contextualize the story. And number two, I would like to see a discounted rate for battery replacements back to $29 or $49, as Apple did with the last batterygate scandal, which, by the way, payouts are just now starting for that, and I do find the timing a bit eerie. Let me end by saying, in all seriousness, I don't believe that Apple has done this intentionally. I don't believe this is some grand scheme to make more money off of people. But the system that is in place right now, Apple will profit from these batteries being bad. A lot of people are gonna just end up paying Apple $100 rather than buying a $1,000 iPhone 15 Pro. And I would like to see Apple take accountability that something is a little bit weird, that it's not so isolated, and do the right thing. Like, that's what I'm saying at the end of the day. I hope that they do the right thing, because I think it's important. And while I'm getting a new phone in 3 weeks when the 15 comes out, a lot of you aren't. Most people don't upgrade their phones every year. And you're just going to be kind of stuck with a phone that doesn't hold a charge for more than a few hours at a time as it just continues to go downhill. Okay. That's all. This was a long one. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.